This lecture is a brief history of Lukens Steel, a rolling mill in Coatesville, Pennsylvania, about 40 miles west of Philadelphia. Lukens was unique in several regards. It was the first mill in America to roll boilerplate in 1818. It was owned and operated by the same family for 188 years, and it was put on a sound financial footing by a woman, Rebecca Lukens. Lukens began as the Brandywine Iron Works and nail factory in 1810. When Isaac Pennock bought Moses Coates' farm, there was a house, a barn, and a sawmill. Isaac converted the sawmill into a rolling mill for rolling bar iron into sheets, and built a nail factory where the sheets were sliced and then forged into nails. In 1810 there was no town of Coatesville. This map, printed in 1814, shows the Brandywine River and the Philadelphia-Lancaster Turnpike, but no Coatesville. The location was a fortunate one, however. It was built along the first paved road in America, the Philadelphia-Lancaster Turnpike. Coatesville had a bridge over the Brandywine, a tavern, and a toll booth. Soon it acquired a post office and a name, as can be seen on this map of 1822. The location continued to be fortunate. The East-West Philadelphia and Columbia Railroad was built through Coatesville in 1834. This put Coatesville firmly on the map and made transportation of incoming supplies and outgoing product much faster and easier. In 1869, the Wilmington and Northern Railroad was built through Coatesville, running north and south. From that point on, tracks were part of the Lukens plant, and they had rapid access to many major railroads. The Brandywine Iron Works and nail factory, in its early days, was a simple affair. They bought bar iron, heated it, and rolled it again and again until it became a thin sheet of metal. In 1816, Isaac Pennock's son-in-law, Dr. Charles Lukens, took over the business. Dr. Lukens had married Isaac's daughter, Rebecca. He'd been trained as a medical doctor and foresaw a future in boilerplate. Later, when his grandson, Charles Lukens Houston, wrote about the tragedy of exploding steamboats, he said, "Many of our plates went into the Mississippi River boats, and, although I do not know that any boilers made from our plates ever blew up, yet, if they did not, it was due to an overruling providence." Ultimately, their specialty was high-quality material. In 1825, Dr. Lukens rolled the first plate iron for the first iron-hulled ship, the Codurus. Its builder, John Elgar, placed another order when suddenly Dr. Lukens died of bronchitis. Rebecca was left with 3 children and another on the way. Rebecca was the eldest of 6 children, and her father had taught her to read, write, and how to run an ironworks. It's best to give Rebecca's story in her own words. She kept many journals, and this was written in one of them. In the summer of 1825, I lost my dear and excellent husband. During the period of our being here, the iron business had been very poor. In our constant expense in repairing the works, it was utterly impossible there should be support left for the young and helpless family now dependent solely on me. Dr. Lukens was sanguine in his hopes for success, and this was his dying request. He wished me to continue, and I promised to comply. Indeed, I knew well I must do something for the children around me. I will not dwell on my feelings when I began to look around me. But necessity is a stern taskmistress, and my every want gave me courage. Besides, where else could I go and live? Dr. Lukens had many good and firm friends, and they all stood by me. The workmen were tried and faithful, and so, with some fear but more courage, I began to struggle for a livelihood. Now I look back and wonder at my daring. Solomon Lukens, Rebecca's brother-in-law, ran the iron works, and Rebecca handled the business from her house pictured here. Her Quaker friends gave her bar iron on credit, and quickly she began to make a profit. When she died, she had $100,000 to distribute among her daughters, as well as the prospering business. From the first, the ironworks was a family affair, but the family consisted of more than relatives. Employees who started with the company and stayed eventually became part of the firm as well. The Iron Works was a community. This was its first schoolhouse. They built worker housing every time they went through a period of growth. This is one of the earliest homes. The workers' housing and the homes of the owners surrounded the plant. Work was continuous with family, and the layout of the community reflects it. Rebecca retired in 1847, and several of her sons-in-law took over the rolling mill. The man on the left is Abraham Gibbons, who eventually resigned to start the first bank in Coatesville. The man in the center is Dr. Charles Houston, also a medical doctor, who eventually controlled the entire business. The man on the right is one of the temporary partners, a cousin named Charles Penrose. Ultimately, the patriarch of the company was Dr. Charles Houston, and the matriarch, Isabella Lukens Houston, Rebecca's daughter. When Rebecca died, she left ownership of the mill to her daughters, and consequently they exercised some control over the years. Later, when they incorporated, some of the employees bought stock in the mill as well. This is a photo of the old mill just before it was torn down in 1895. Dr. Charles Houston stands in the middle, his two sons to his left. Two of the longtime employees who had considerable control in the company, Horace Spackman and Joseph Humpton, are to his right. The mill maintained a bucolic appearance until the end of the 19th century. In this photo, you can see the workers' garden next to the plant. The first expansion that they did was when they built a steam-powered mill with 84-inch rolls. This was after the Civil War in 1870. Over the years, they continually upgraded the plant. The first set of rolls was joined by a second. This photo is taken from the feeder's side, where they fed the iron or steel into the rolls. This is the view from the catcher's side, where the rolled metal came out in sheets. Later it was cut into different shapes in different parts of the plant. The most important change from my point of view, because it affected the technical communication, was when they built the first open hearth furnace in 1890. This brought them into a new technological world of unseen processes, complex chemical and physical interactions, which resulted in stronger material. Previously they bought iron or steel and then rolled it. Now they would make their own. Open hearth number 1 was built on the site of the former workers' garden. The bucolic landscape was gone. From this point forward it was an industrial town. New furnaces and new mills were added, all using new technology. The site became so complex that it was hard to map and almost impossible to draw. The Houstons' homes were at the edge of the plant, like the workers' housing. The two brothers, Abram Francis and Charles Lukens, took on different roles in the firm. Abram was in charge of sales, and thus he traveled frequently to their satellite offices to drum up business. Charles was the works manager. Over the years they grew apart. In this photo of the office staff, Dr. Houston is sitting in the center to the left, Abram directly across from him. Charles is absent from the picture. Charles is present in this formal outdoor picture of the office staff. They must have rounded him up. Abram and Charles flank Dr. Houston. The source of their enmity is unknown. Charles Lukens Houston, as works manager, donated his papers to the Hagley, but most of the papers of Abram are missing. During the Civil War, the firm had prospered, and during World War I they prospered as well. They could barely hire enough men to fill the positions necessary in the multiple mills, furnaces, and other parts of the plant. They hired Eastern European immigrants and black men from the South, first building camps for them and later moving them to the workers' housing when they needed the campgrounds to expand the plant. It was at this time that Charles Lukens Houston began to plan what would become the largest rolling mill in the world. He wanted to be able to roll plate of greater width and thickness. Single rolls could not withstand the strain, so he devised a system of supporting rolls which he then patented. When the big mill opened in 1918, it was the largest in the world, and it functioned very well. They had also built a third set of open hearth furnaces, but by then the war had ended, demand for their product was down, and the new furnaces sat idle. During World War I, the number of employees at Lukens Steel averaged around 2,000. After the downturn, they laid off workers, cut the remaining workers' wages, stopped taking stock dividends, and took out a mortgage on the plant for the first time. The simple fact was, no one knew how many people worked there. Each division had grown somewhat autonomously, hiring when they needed people and then letting them go when work was slow. Moreover, the employees were paid in cash. The stress between Abram and Charles grew as they watched the plant spin out of their control. Behind the scenes, the board of directors, consisting of family members and some longtime employees, hired a comptroller to gain control over the finances. They voted that the comptroller should take immediate control of the time cards and pay the employees by check. This change went against the grain for Charles, who immediately threatened to resign. It was 1925. He was 69 and had been with the business for 50 years. Abram was 73 and had been with the business for 53 years. Behind closed doors, it was decided that both would resign, and the firm would be taken over by Robert Walcott, a son-in-law of Abram's, who had already proven himself in the business. The plant had grown from a wooden building powered by a water wheel to a huge system of interconnected parts that produced high-quality specialty steel. The story does not end in 1925. Lukens Steel continued on through ups and downs, creating new products to match consumer needs. They created a special clad steel for the Manhattan Project, and they built the lower beams for the World Trade Center. In 1998, they were bought out by Bethlehem Steel, who went bankrupt in 2001. Presently, part of the plant is being operated by Arcelor-Mittal, the world's largest global steel corporation. Part of it sits idle with the historic machinery intact. The surrounding town, Coatesville, has lost its main source of income, and the workers' housing surrounding the plant shows its age. 2 of the family mansions are renovated, and the Gray Stone Foundation hopes to make the old part of the plant into an industrial heritage museum. Lukens Steel is the legacy of an extraordinary woman who rebuilt the plant that her father and husband had begun and created a family that worked together for 188 years. This photo is from a floating aircraft repair ship named the Rebecca Lukens during World War II. She was one of the exceptions to historical convention. Quite likely there are more. It is fortunate for us that the family saved many of their papers so that we can read this story in them. The archive resides in the Hagley Museum and Library in Wilmington, Delaware. More information about the family is with the family itself in Coatesville, Pennsylvania. It's possible that in other archives in other cities there are similar stories that break our habits of thought when it comes to how our world evolved.